And I basically only use open source software. Actually, I'm just making a stupid color wheel of myself. Like, yeah, that's my stupid face in the video, and I'm trying to match the different colors to my skin tone. By now, I'm not sure if I'm an autumn or a winter. Truth is that I really liked blue tones for a while, but now I kind of don't. But I always come back to them somehow, you know? Like it's an on and off relationship. I prefer the grays, but then in the back of my head, there is this little voice saying, but you have bluish eyes and, you know, blue. And then the other part of my head is, no, I like warm tones and I like autumn, like not as a season, but the colors of autumn I like. I prefer winter actually. But the thing is that then I think, I also like mustard yellow. Anyway, that has nothing to do with the topic. Just if any of you are color nerds, I usually white balance my videos. If you think you know what type I am, just write it in the comments. Anyway, open source software, right? Of course, I am not an Apple user. I have a Fairphone. I have an old ThinkPad. I've been using ThinkPads forever. On my ThinkPad there is a Debian because Debian has rolling updates, and basically everyone who doesn't want rolling updates, I don't understand you. I don't get you. How do you live? Actually, I don't want to know. So, and like, for me, I'm not a Linux evangelist, as Luke Smith would say, but I really like Linux. I have not been using Windows for the past 1.5 decades, I think, minimum, except for work, right? And I've been not happy with Linux, you know? Guys, I'm not like, oh, Linux is so great, I have to use it all the time, it's the best operating system and everything else is crap. No, like Linux is annoying. I remember that I had to write my own driver for a printer just because my printer didn't come with a Linux driver and I really liked that printer. Yeah. It was worth it though. The thing is, I want to say I'm not like, oh, Linux is so awesome and everything else is bullshit. But I feel like that from all the crap that is out there regarding operating systems for PCs, Linux is the least, or the types of Linuxes are the least crappy ones compared to everything else, like Apple and Windows as the main two competitors. Well, are they really? I don't think that Apple and Windows actually compete with Linux. I think the different Linux distributions compete with each other. Like, you know, if you go to some hacker convention or something, then some people, like cool people not, but some people will be like, oh, what, you have Manjaro, so you're too stupid to install a real Arch Linux? And in German, there are some nerds, like at my faculty, that would install Arch Linux just because it sounds like the German word for ass. Yeah. Lamest word joke ever. Anyway, I tried Arch Linux. I didn't like it. I just don't like the distribution content. But anyway, I also tried Manjaro and it wasn't better. So if you are thinking about installing Manjaro instead of Arch Linux, like go for Arch Linux right away, because the trouble is the same. And yeah, I don't know. In my opinion, Debian is the best one. But that's not the point of the video. The point of the video is why I prefer this over a system that comes like basically pre-installed. Like you have to do a few clicks, and unless you're completely stupid, you will have no problem with installing Windows, right? I mean, at this point, Windows is idiot proof, and I'm a romantic, so sometimes I think back of the time of this little paperclip. He was called Karl Klammer in German, I think. He was giving you these pop-up tips about, you know, stuff you might be wanting to do with your Windows Word. I don't know. How did not everyone switch to LaTeX right then and there because of Karl Klammer? Like, what the fuck? Anyway, do you say LaTeX or LaTeX or LaTeX? Just put it in the comments right where your color analysis is. I would really appreciate that. So Carl, right? And what was Carl's name in your language? I think back to these days, like using a computer was still difficult then. You needed some skills to be able to understand what the computer needed in order for it to be doing what you wanted. And today, it's the complete opposite. Computers are made to be easy. Everything is so simple that it's stupid. To me, it's stupid. It's not fun anymore. You don't have to figure out anything. It's just so boring. And I look back at these olden days where computers were hard to use and basically idiot proof, because if you were an idiot, you would just ruin that computer. And I'm not sorry for using the word idiot, because I believe that in today's day and age, you should be tech savvy. You should be able to set up your router, and the wiring coming out of it should be neat. I'm gonna show you mine. That's how it's done. Oh, I can hear you already in the comments, like, you call that proper wiring? Like, what are you, a physicist? Yeah, I actually am a physicist. Because if I was an engineer, I know that would look different. I know. I hear you. Like, I think there are memes about like the CERN and the CERN engineers and the CERN physicists and how their wiring below their desk looks. I understand, but this is the standard, all right? You can do way better, but if you're doing worse, then you really suck. Anyway, back to the Linux question. So I said that I think everyone should be tech savvy in this day and age, right? I think that... Oh, also, what is this with my closet? That doesn't look nice. Yeah, that's better. So anyway, the reason why I think this is that I believe today everything is already way too easy. I come across so many people in everyday life who are not just not willing to, I don't know, install a new sink or toilet in their bathroom. Even if I wanted to, they couldn't. And while I think that is partially okay when it comes to, you know, flooding your living room potentially, I don't think that it's at all okay with digital knowledge. Because this is so everyday. Like, when do you install a sink, right? I mean, unless you want to renovate a big house and save a lot of money, you don't necessarily have to learn that yourself. But technology, you look into that thing. Maybe not 24/7, but 7 of 7 days and multiple hours of 24. You should know how this works. You should know how to opt in and out of stuff. You should know what the base of this operating system is. You should know like the structure, the basic structure of an operating system of your computer, like where to find some files, where to find drivers, where to find fonts. Like, a lot of people don't even know where their fonts are. And then they Google all this stuff, and if you look at Stack Exchange, for instance, or other user forums, and you see the most stupid answers, like, I don't even have time to answer some stuff, but especially when it comes to mathematics or to programming, like, the programming answers are they are so bad that I found answers which I have solved, like, because I was looking for this problem and I solved it with a one-liner. And then these programmers, or claiming to be programmer people who probably self-taught, they bring up solutions that are pages long and they take more than a bunch of milliseconds to run. No, just no. And I don't mean that in an arrogant way, but I mean that in a way that criticizes people who take half-assed solutions. And if you take half-assed solutions for a simple math problem, you probably take a half-assed solution for a lot of things in life. Yeah, I know, I'm going from the specific case to the general case, but can you really not generalize? Just think about it. Because this is often symptomatic. Like, people don't want to be bothered in general. They don't want to be bothered by, you know, their broken toilet. So they have, they call a handyman, and handyman comes and fixes it for them. They don't want to be bothered with, their storage solution. So they store everything in the cloud. They don't want to be bothered with an operating system. So they just buy one. And you end up spending money on a lot of things you can get for free with the same value. Not all of the time. You know, Photoshop is obviously better than GIMP. Are there GIMP hotheads in the comments right now? Come on. Photoshop is objectively better and easier to use. But again, I can achieve a lot of things, and personally, I don't use Photoshop anymore, even though I love Photoshop. You know, I really like Photoshop, but I don't use it anymore. And the reason for that is that for my purposes of editing thumbnails, family photos, and blog pictures, I don't need it. I am not some fancy photographer. Like, I can do Jonna Jinton style pretty photos of Swedish landscapes and it'll be fine for me and probably a lot of my audience. And in what quality does it go anywhere? 180 pixel by whatever, you know? That's the width of your screen. Nobody watches this stuff in 4K and I frankly think it's a waste of space because, you know, my eyes don't even have that resolution. I look at it at this distance without glasses. It's not even clear, so I don't even see the details. And I believe a lot of people do not even pay attention to the details if they see them. It's like with a movie, right? When you watch a movie and, for instance, it's a lawyer movie. And so the lawyers, they wear all these fancy clothes and they have ties. And the person who was, you know, looking for a good tie for that lawyer character in the movie probably put a lot of effort into picking the ties. And the person who took care of the scenery of the courtroom probably paid attention to a lot of details, like where do pens go, how does it look so that it comes across as natural, how's the light, how's the setting, what people are in the courtroom, like old people, young people, and so on. So this whole scene comes across as completely natural to you, but you will look at the main character and like the lawyer character in this lawyer movie, and let's say the lawyer is making her point in front of the judge and the judge is then asking questions, or I don't know what an American judge does, but let's just assume, you know, this is the scenery and you have a lawyer and a judge and they interact. You'd look at these two main characters of the scene. You don't look at the pens and the lamps in the back. And so for me, I want to capture moments and then I want to edit them in a nice, okay style. I don't take photos where every little detail needs to be perfect. And frankly, if I did it like that, even with the best software, I would never get shit done in life in general. Like I would never be done with editing if I had all these things to do. You have to stop at some point. You have to stop optimizing. And so yeah, that's my opinion on like the graphic editing, design, whatever software. I don't miss Word either. I use LaTeX for everything that I need. And usually, by the way, we call it LaTeX or latex. Some say latex, like latex, but yeah, I don't know. And so I use that. And I used to be such a nerd that I would even use it to write letters or make the print for the little sign on my mailbox. Yeah, I'm not that stupid anymore, but I understand where people are coming from if they like that kind of stuff. Like, oh, look at my latex balls. They are so big and I do everything in latex. I would never use a stupid editor or, you know, some Google Docs shit. Like, I know. It's cute, you know. When you're over it, it's just super cute. I value my time. I don't do that stuff in LaTeX. Oh, I'm so fast. I can do that fast as well in LaTeX. No, you can't. You can't do it faster than in Google Docs or Windows Word. No. I mean, if you have 100 templates, maybe for all this different shit, sure, and you could just put in your template and hit compile. But all the templates, they stole time from you in the making as well. So yeah, I'm not buying it. But my point is, to each his own, you know, like if you enjoy that, if it gives you happiness, like do your mailbox sticker with LaTeX, like go crazy. For me, this is not the point in using open source software that is like I don't have to prove to anybody that it's as fast or as good. I think it's not. You know, I think it sucks ass sometimes to be an open source user, and I don't care. That's not the point for me. The point for me is I don't spend money on software. I also don't spend time on software. Like, I think if it would really keep me from being efficient, I would go back to using Photoshop. I would get a second computer just to do that probably. But like on my private computer, I don't want no proprietary shit. But you know, just for the editing, I had another computer just for that. But it turned out that it wasn't so great. I also tried DaVinci Resolve, for instance, which is a commercial software that is free. But I reverted to Blender. I edit all my videos in Blender, and after Blender fixed most of its bugs, it works perfectly fine for my purposes. Does it take 5 seconds longer to do graphs, like a speed ramp or something like that? I don't use speed ramps, but if I did, yes, it does. It's not automated easily, but it's fine. Like, it doesn't save me enough time that it would be worth it to me to spend the money on a subscription. I mean, all these softwares now, they're all subscription based. They want to suck the money out of you on a yearly basis. I don't really like the idea of that. That's opposite of freedom. And so it's like the sink thing or the toilet thing, you know? Because yes, it takes a little bit more time to fix the toilet myself, but I would still do it because I don't want to give the money to a plumber. And overall, the plumber might save me a few minutes. Like, let's say maybe an hour or two tops, and it's just not worth it to me compared to my lifespan. And now people say, oh, but that accumulates, you know, you never know how much time you spend on all these little things. But what I think is interesting that this is usually coming from people who then spend a lot of time on consumer devices like their phones, consuming meaningless, repetitive, messageless, pathetic entertainment content. And so personally, I don't understand that, and I don't think that if you spend your time like that in general, if you spend a lot of your time like that in general, that you have leverage and that you are in the position to criticize someone who fixes their own sink, writes their own printer driver, or uses open source and maybe takes a few more minutes to edit a speed RAM. That is absurd. And so, yeah, that's my viewpoint on that. And I also want to say that I don't have beef with any Windows or Apple users. I personally despise Apple. The whole company philosophy is not for me, but I understand why people would use it. Like, if you're a total noob or you're like a subscriber to the Apple aesthetic and you cannot help yourself, I get it. I mean, you can make a Linux look like an Apple, but you cannot make it feel like an Apple computer, I guess. And I understand how people like that, you know, how it's the same, like people like to dress a certain way, to feel a certain way, but the older I get, the more I feel like all of this is crap and it's just not for me and it doesn't give me happiness. And I also don't want to feel like superior or better because of a fancy, overly expensive computer, you know? Like the money an Apple computer costs me, I don't know, and it doesn't give me back enough for that kind of money. It's not customizable enough. And so, yeah, while I don't understand why anyone would use this kind of system, it doesn't make sense to me. I would not go to an Apple user and say, hey, you're stupid. And I don't think that they're stupid. I think there is more to life than operating systems, and I also think that the attitude is oftentimes coming from them and not from the Linux users going around shaming Apple users, right? I hear it especially from YouTubers who are less like just so all about this Apple philosophy and Android is stupid and Windows is stupid and everything. I don't know, maybe I'm biased here because of course I am hearing more of this when people say that, but I also think it works the other way around. Like Android users are always like, oh, Apple is stupid and it's so dumb, and Apple users are little children and stuff like that. I do think there is a truth to that cliche, but you don't know how well versed these people are in everyday life. I am just saying that if all you got is an Apple computer and you also can't fix anything in your house, you should start questioning your life's choices. Like for real. And do not, oh, but I have time to spend on other stuff because all these gadgets and apps and shit make my life so much easier and give me so much more time for myself and for my personal development. Like, what are you developing? Your personality? Because certainly not your handymanship or your skill set. Like, what are you developing? I mean, you could say, oh, I'm an artist, I'm a musician, I don't need anything of that. Cool, but then you're kind of the exception. Like, how many musicians and artists are there? Like, I would say that more people depend on tech and should know about it than people think they do. And I also think that our society would really largely benefit from people being more interested in everyday tech. So that's what I'm advocating for, and that's why I'm advocating for open source software. Open source software gives you opportunities that other software just doesn't. I also have a whole podcast episode on this, on how I do open source editing. You can listen to that on my blog if you're interested in that, and I go into details of my editing process and why I like it and so on. And it's also available for members as a video. Anyway, I get that this video, in my opinion, is pretty ambivalent again, and that's partially on purpose. As I said, I kind of don't want to shame people for being Apple users, but for me personally, I still think that Apple is inferior as a product because it doesn't challenge you. But my premise is that I want to be challenged. I want to have a system that is not like a black box. I want a system that I can change, interfere with, and that I can optimize for my personal use. But I also have the idea that if you are completely unable to understand your computer system and to do things yourself, you're kind of a noob, and being a noob isn't good in 2023, or like hasn't been for the last 20 years. So being a noob is not a good thing. Being a nerd isn't necessary to understand basic computer stuff. There are people, very skilled people, who get into using software, and it's sophisticated software. Photoshop or other editing tools like video editing, what is it called? Premiere Pro. It's a sophisticated software. It does a lot of the legwork for you, but you still need to have a brain to use that software. And so I think that if you can wrap your head around that, you can totally work with open source as well. The question is just, why is it so important to use software that makes everything easy? Why is that so important to you? And then the question is also, does this just come from a position of privilege? Because it's so easy to just download and pay for this software, you know? Because for me, it's like, I want to save that money. I don't want to spend that money. And I've always used open source software to save money. I have not paid for software in at least one and a half decades, I think. For me, that's just normal. I cannot imagine anymore what it's like to waste money on software that does the same thing as the software I already have for a little bit better. Like, and I don't get the obsession about this detail of having something that is like just a tiny bit better than what I have. It's like having a car, and your car is like perfectly fine. It works. It does everything you want. I mean, sometimes you have to tweak it a little bit, but then someone else has the same car and just the cooler grill is golden or something. That's the difference for me between these operating systems. It's just a different mindset, and it's just, you have to put in the work in the beginning, but in the end, once you get it to work, they all do the same. I can work with a Linux and an Apple computer because I am me, because I know how to work with any software. I can do anything on any system. And I think if you can't do that, then you have not truly arrived in the digital age, and you are dependent on a technology that does the thinking for you. And to me, that sounds a little bit creepy and dangerous. I don't want to be that person. I don't want my kid to be that person. I don't want my husband to be that person. And thankfully he isn't. But do I want everyone to be like me? Do I want everyone to be able to code in 5 languages? No, but it doesn't hurt to know a little system architecture, a little HTML, a little data analysis language, maybe some stupid Python, some nice Python, you know, something that connects you to the way in which a programmer thinks. And I think that this is a very rewarding thing to do, to learn about computers, to learn about technology, to even learn about your phone. For instance, I've seen so many people who wanted to program an app, but they couldn't do it. Like, they had a perfect design idea, but then they need 5 people to do it for them because they just couldn't code. And I can say, from being able to program my own apps, it's way easier if you can do everything by yourself, because it's faster. You don't have to ask other people. You don't have to write back and forth with other people. You can do it right away as you like it, and it just saves you a lot of time. And in the end, I'm not even sure like if my software is so much more high maintenance, like especially the Linux. Yeah, it takes like 2 days to set up, but after that, you know, it's fine. It's like I'm fluent in this, and I can set up probably any Linux and any computer, and it doesn't take me a lot of time anymore. Just I don't get this initial hurdle of, oh, this is too difficult for me, from people who haven't even tried and who are so super sure about it not being even worth it. Like, you don't get to judge that if you haven't tried. You know, you don't get to judge that from looking at somebody else's computer. Just try it and then come back to me and then tell me what your problem is, and I'm gonna help you out. Because if none of the things that I said convince you, then, well, let me just say that open source software and Linux in general is just cooler. Okay, so maybe that helps you fall for it. And that's it. Thanks for watching.